Yeah.
And so
Love it.
I think Bitcoin's going through all that, right? There's stuff to be built.
Yeah.
Right. If the accounting changes for every company in the world in February of or January of 2025, then I guess that means the accounting profession has to learn a bunch of new things. There's new stuff to be done, right? New procedures and accounting systems to be, reviewed. And likewise, it's one thing to say banks should custody Bitcoin. It's another thing to create, are 10,000 banks going to create their own Bitcoin custody service? Well, is that a risk or is that an opportunity? I guess I'm back to 1900 and I'm in New York and we just invented electricity. And I'm just pointing out that I think like one day all buildings will be wired with electricity. And you're asking me, are there risks in the wiring of New York City with electricity? And I guess there's going to be some electric fires, right? And there's also going to be a lot of fire insurance that gets sold. And there's also going to be electricians, and there's going to be electricians union, and there's going to be a lot of projects, and there's probably going to be a bond, and somebody's going to complain about it. We're going to dig a lot of trenches, right? Because where are those power lines running? And someone's probably going to put a drill, jackhammer through one of the power lines, and stuff's going to happen. And then we're going to fight over whether we burn coal or we run the power line to Niagara Falls. And there's going to be stuff, but I just think there's just a lot of work to be done. We're building out the future.
One thing that's nice too about Bitcoin as compared to Manhattan is with a city, you might have a single regulator or jurisdiction that you got to deal with. And of course, you got to negotiate to rights of way to build out the infrastructure. Nice thing about Bitcoin being that it's global and open. Anybody can build on anything. As you say, a bunch of banks can give it their best shot and there'll be competition among them to provide the best service, and the market will decide. Are there any areas within Bitcoin infrastructure? You mentioned custody, you mentioned banks. Obviously, you've got corporate adoption. Are there other areas that are particularly fruitful or interesting with respect to the story right now that you're watching carefully, or are those the main ones?
Well, I'm focused upon Bitcoin is digital capital. So it's the transformation of financial and physical capital to digital capital. And that's not complicated. That's a very simple idea if you just say it like that. But the implication is it's also driving the digital transformation of the capital markets. So the capital markets are fragmented, right? The bond market trades in Japan at different times than the bonds trading in Germany, and then the bonds trading in Brazil, then the bonds trading in the US. And the equity market, right? Our existing capital markets are built around equity and debt. And there's some derivatives, right? Equity, debt, and derivatives, and they trade 9:30 to 4 Monday through Friday, and they don't trade on the weekends, and they don't trade on holidays, and they're all fragmented, and they're limited in access. So the implication of somebody being able to trade in a capital market in Australia on Saturday and having an impact somewhere in the United States, 12 hours off on the time zone or something. That's interesting. So a real-time 24/7 global capital market is interesting. And up until now, it has been, again, it was 0.01% of the money in the world, when it was 6,000 or 7,000 a coin. And now it's 0.1% of the money in the world. And so it is a global digital capital market, but it's still de minimis in amount of capital. And so I think that as you see bigger players come into the marketplace and it gets to be 1% of the capital of the world, now you're going to have the tension of the 20th century. The 20th century capital markets, they're fragile. They're limited to a certain set of people. There are very limited settlement options. They're slow. They're not smart. You can't trade Apple stock 100,000 times on a Saturday afternoon, right? You can't vibrate it at a high frequency. You don't have you can't self-custody. You can't program it, right? So the capital that's in the traditional markets, it's not programmable, it's slow, it's fragile. And the capital in the 21st century, it's going to be smarter, faster, stronger. And so the interesting opportunity is what happens when the investment bankers and the commercial bankers and the money managers realize that digital capital is smarter, faster, stronger, universal, right? Because it has a lot of implications, right? Like there's 50,000 publicly traded companies, and how many of them are capitalized on Bitcoin? How many of them are capitalized on bonds? So 99.99% of the corporate capital is financial capital, which is fragile, fragmented, right, and defective, right. Digital capital is appreciating at 45% a year, and over the last 4 years, and financial capital is depreciating at 4% a year.
Yep.
In fiat, this is in USD terms, right? But I think that has profound impact on investment banking, right? Like, why wouldn't you go and recapitalize every company? So that's interesting. I think what's also interesting is it's like the same the financial world brags about taking settlement from T plus 5 days. Like in 1970 to 75, it was like T plus 5 days, T plus 5 to 10 days, then T plus 3 days. And it was T plus 2 days as of a year ago. And now we're getting to T plus 1 day. But we're not T plus 1 day. On Friday, it might be from